SportsLine on News Channel 5 Plus with game day host and executive producer for Titans Radio, Rhett Bryan. I'm Jonathan Hutton, talking Titans football with you. Phone line at the bottom of the screen if you'd like to join us for the next 10 minutes or so. We'll be taking your phone calls. And also going down memory lane with Rhett, who has seen a lot of Titans football over the years. Favorite venue that you enjoy visiting, that you would love to see on the road trip year after year?
It'd have to be Lambeau Field. Green Bay is unbelievable. Now, I've also always said that if we were in the black and blue division and we were with Minnesota or Chicago, we probably wouldn't be as welcome. But the folks up there are so nice.
Really?
The venue is fantastic. What they did in that remodel they did a few years ago, that was $300-some-odd million. It's kind of the Camden Yards of the NFL ballparks. They kept a lot of the history but did the modern upgrades, lots of brick and iron. It's a beautiful place and, of course, storied history.
Well, I started traveling with the Titans radio crew. By the way, shout out to Philip Noel, who I believe is watching.
Nice.
Brad Willis, voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, Frank Wycheck. I started traveling last year, and my favorite venues were the venues where the crowd lives up to the expectations.
Sure.
And what I mean by that is Baltimore, Philadelphia, Washington. The crowds where they're known for being a little raucous, a little crazy.
Yeah, the dog pound this year.
Yeah, the dog pound, though, let me down a little bit. I've heard all these horror stories, and then the Cleveland fans were actually very polite to me as I was walking in and out of the tunnel. Baltimore absolutely let me have it pregame, which I thought was great. Philadelphia was the same way. In the division, is it Houston, maybe, because of the tie with the Oilers and the Titans?
Yeah, I think so.
Me too. I enjoyed that last year.
What a monster stadium that is.
And it's pretty loud.
It can get very loud, very loud. People don't realize how big that place is. I mean, the Astronome's still sitting right next door, and it dwarfs it in size. Dwarfs it.
Kansas City cannot go unsaid. Kansas City is a lot of fun, and you have a story there when it comes to a team flight.
My first year traveling, the very first road preseason game in Kansas City in 1999. We are packing up
your
the
first
gear.
road trip.
Yes, first road trip. Packing up the gear, getting ready to come out of the tunnel and put the gear on the buses to get to the airport. There are no buses. They're gone. And for some reason this year, that particular year, Larry Stone was traveling separate. And so he got into a rental car and drove me and I guess it was Cody Allison, and drove us about 110 on the interstate getting to the airport.
I can imagine.
And I kept calling them saying, don't leave, we're coming, I'm coming into the terminal now, and literally went through the jetway, came all the way through to the back of the plane, sat in my seat, sat down, and they backed the plane up and left. I mean, it was very close. And the equipment, that's the crazy part. Lori Morgan was playing a concert a couple nights later at Kauffman Stadium next door where the Royals play. And bless her heart, her people said, you can put our gear on our rig and we'll get it back to Nashville in a couple days.
So Lori Morgan's crew brought the Titans radio equipment back to Nashville.
Her crew sure did, and we're forever indebted to her for that. But it wouldn't probably been rough getting back to Nashville and putting on a broadcast the next week. But that was happenstance there for sure.
Let's go to Warren next up here on SportsLine, talking Titans football with Rhett Bryan. Warren, welcome in. How are you?
Great, thanks. First-time caller, long-time viewer, love the show. Just want to know if McCluster can't return punts, who's the backup punt returner? I'll hang up and listen to your call.
Thank you, Warren.
I think we know who Warren is, don't we?
Not a McCluster fan, apparently.
Of course.
Although McCluster averaged 10 yards per punt return last week.
Yes, he did.
Had a great game. Cleveland, not last week, but the Cleveland game.
Right.
Let's go next to Raymond on line 2. Hey, Raymond.
Yeah, hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I might sound kind of crazy, but I know a guy named Bill Belichick up in New England has done some things with interchanging players at different positions and having success. And, just to shake things up, would it be crazy to try somebody like a Justin Hunter as a DB in practice? I mean, the guy is long, he's athletic. I mean, I just think the Titans need to do something just to find a spark, and I'll just hang up and listen.
Got to use Justin Hunter, but they need to use him on offense more.
Yeah, they do, because they only kept 4 wide receivers. I think Ken Wisenhunt's version of that is bringing Carl Klug in on those big package plays, goal line, running the ball. I think that's kind of – now, he may have something else up his sleeve, but Jeff Fisher was the one that always had the trickeration, and certainly Bill Belichick does that on a weekly basis. And that brings to mind probably my worst experience on the road, October the 19th, 2009 at Foxborough. And the Titans roll in, a heavy underdog. It's a horrific rainstorm. It's a nor'easter, as a matter of fact. And the rain turns to these large clumps of snow, and it snows the whole game. It's Jason McCourty's first start at cornerback with young Ryan Mouton, the other draft pick. And Tom Brady sets NFL records for passing touchdowns in a quarter with 5. I think the last time we looked at the
Randy
scoreboard,
Moss had a career day.
Yeah, he really did. It was 59-0 at the end. Never forget that one. Want to. And that's one of the few times I wanted to get up and go home, but we had some jobs to do. So
the long flight back, too.
Wow.
Weather games. That one certainly was cold and wet. Have you been in a...
Well, the Foxborough playoff game in early 2004, I think it was like 4 degrees at kickoff and -2 by the time it was done, and that was the second of the doubleheader playoff games that day. And that's the coldest game ever, without a doubt, that I've done in the whole time we've been traveling with the team.
Biggest takeaways as we wrap up some of the Titans discussion tonight. Biggest takeaways from the first 3 games. Some players that have stood out to you, other than who we've discussed, Marcus Mariota in the offense. Anybody on defense stand out?
I really like Brian Arakpo is starting to make a presence there. He had his first sack as a Titan yesterday.
Had a great game yesterday.
He really did. And, he said...
He's had a really nice start to the year. I mean, the Tampa Bay game comes to mind where he didn't record a sack, but he was in the backfield a lot.
He says that sacks are overrated. It's a fan stat. He said, I want to look at my stat line in terms of hurries and pressures. I want to make that quarterback uncomfortable, get him out of rhythm. And there's a lot to what he says there. But he's one. Derek Morgan has stood out. 3 quarterback sacks already this year. So those guys on defense
tackled
for sure.
Zach Brown yesterday, too.
Yeah, he sure did.
Zach Brown tackled himself. Derek Morgan, 5 sacks over his last 7 games, I believe, counting back to last year.
I think that's exactly right. And that's
really
a guy
coming along in the 3-4.
Yeah. I mean, from a guy to have his hand in the dirt as a defensive end to go back to being an offensive, an outside linebacker, it's quite the transition. And they say that was probably one of the key free agents they got was re-signing one of their own in Derek Morgan.
And how about Parrish Cox? He has had a nice start. He's competitive, aggressive.
He started it in training camp. He started in those OTAs. I mean, it seemed like every day he had an interception off of somebody, except Mariota, and then eventually got one of those. But, he's been a very nice addition, without a doubt.
Wrap things up coming up here on SportsLine. He's Rhett Bryan. I'm Jonathan Hutton. This is News Channel 5 Plus.